Hola, estudiantes. I'm here to give a semiotics lecture, a brief one that accompanies your readings from Queer Theory Now and Queerographic History. And specifically, it's referenced on page 8 of Queer Theory Now, the signifier and the signified. And so we probably won't go through all the slides, but I'm going to give you a little history to help you understand what the authors were saying. So what exactly is semiotics? Semiotics is the study of how we create meaning. It is the study of language, and it's a really fun field. I did a lot of work with semiotics in my ethnic studies degree and in my English degrees. And so we're referencing the quote at the top of page 8 in Queer Theory Now, in which Britzman suggests queer theory occupies a difficult space between the signifier and the signified, where something queer happens to the signified, to history and to bodies, and something queer happens to the signifier, to language and to representation. And so, based on this little graphic here, I would say that this scholar is suggesting that queer theory is occupying an in-between space, and here's a nice in-between space right here, and specifically an in-between space for how meaning is created. And so the equation is usually sign equals signified over signifier. So what do I mean when I say the word signs? Well, signs are meanings of words, images, sounds, etc. Society gives meaning to signs. We determine what it means when you see a red light. Signifier, the one on the bottom, is the word, idea, or concept. This is the form the sign is taking. So with the example I just gave, it could be literally a red light on a street when you're driving. The signifier is that red light. It's the form. Signified is the meaning of that signifier, the meaning that we as a society has given it. And so when I'm driving and I see that red light, my meaning is stop. That is the signified. And so I'm going to give you an example. The example is literally a sign, an open sign. Okay, so the sign is the combination of these two, signifiers and signified. So let me go to the next slide. Example of how we would read a sign. It helps that I'm using a literal sign. I'm walking down the street and I see this sign. And it just happens to represent the overall semiotic word of a sign. And my mind and my concept of reality, I look at this and my mind quickly derives some type of meaning. So the overall representation of both the signifier and the signified is the actual thing I'm looking at, this open sign. The signifier is the word spelled out, O-P-E-N, open. And the signified, which is on top of our little equation, means in the English language, when I see these letters come together, I know that a place of business is open for me to shop, to come in. So remember, this is our little equation. So our sign, both of these, was literally an open sign. The signifier is the presentation of what I'm looking at, the words that spelled out O-P-E-N, and the signified was the meaning that I derived, this idea of I can come in, I can shop here. And so with queer theory and queer studies, the authors are suggesting that it's blurring this notion of derived meaning, and it's somewhere between these two areas, the signifier and the signified. Okay. And so I'm going to leave you with this idea of signs as being very gendered, because this is where it relates to what we're reading and thinking about. In society, we socially construct gender because language is not normally gendered. We give language its gendered nature, and there has been a very big push for more gender neutral language. And we can do some examples later in terms of how we can read signs and what it means to not be gendered in our presentation. And I guess maybe I'll give you one example from this PowerPoint just so you have it. So here's our sign. It's this entire image here of this person. So the question is, what is the signifier, form, or expression of the content? What is the signified meaning? What is our initial reading of the sign? And can we train ourselves to read signs without using gendered understandings of language and knowledge production? Okay, so if you remember that signifier is the form. So it's this person in front of us. We look at this person and we're trying to read meaning. Signified is the meaning that we derive from them. And so here's a reading that you can take. Sign 1. The signifier is the image of a black boy. My initial interpretation upon the signified meaning is that this is an African American black boy. Upon closer self-reflection, I might question the way I derived my signified meaning. For example, am I sure that this is an African American boy? Can it be an African boy? Can it be an Afro-Latinx boy? Am I even sure this individual identifies itself as a boy? What markers did I use to equate the gendered term boy? And so I might consider the color of the clothes, the hands, the body gestures, etc. And can I read my sign using non-gendered language? So for example, could I have read this sign and said, I see a person of color. They look happy. I wonder what they are happy about. And of course, I had to comment on that really cool hat the individual is wearing. So part of semiotics and the querying of semiotics is changing the way we read signs. So I'm going to go ahead and just scroll through maybe a couple more here. So sign 2. What is this signifier? What is the signified meaning? What is my initial reading of the sign? And can I read this sign without using gendered language in knowledge production? And so here I go and I say, oh, this is a woman of color. My initial interpretation upon the signified meaning is that it is a Latinx woman of color. And upon closer self-reflection, I might question the way I derived my meaning. For example, am I sure that this is a Latinx woman of color? Can this be an African American woman? Can it be an African American male? Can it be someone that is multiracial? Am I even sure this individual identifies itself as a girl? What markers should I use to equate the gendered term girl? And I might consider length of hair, the beauty mark on the face, body gestures. And can I read my sign using non-gendered language? I see a person of color. They look happy. I wonder what they are happy about. Maybe the fact that we have Monday off due to a holiday. And that's next week, Monday, not this week. Another sign. We have a small baby in a towel. So how can we train ourselves on this reading again? And here's an example. The signifier, which is the form of our sign, is a baby in an elephant towel. My initial interpretation, The signified meaning is that the baby finished having a bath. Upon closer self-reflection, I might question why I derived my meaning this way. Am I sure this baby took a bath? What about swimming in a pool? How did I determine that this was a baby? Size of the human being, development in early life, the towel equates that the child was wet. Could the child be wet for another reason? And then this is where it's really significant for this notion of queer theory and queering in general, in terms of language. When babies are born, there are not a lot of gender markers outside of biological sex markers. And we socialize the gender markers on babies at a young age. Hence, blue is boy, pink is girl. And so some of our queering and ungendering of language should occur at the very birth of our community and our young people. So final sign, and I ended up going through this whole presentation because I was just having so much fun. We have a gender reveal. Okay, so my reading of this sign. The signifier is an image of a couple, and we notice this couple looks pretty heteronormative, and that's a term used in chapter 1 of Queer Theory Now. You have what appears to be a man and appears to be a woman, and so it's a heteronormative, heterosexual relationship, and they are revealing the gender of their child. As mentioned, blue equates boy. And so now, how can I derive my meaning to be less normative and less gendered? So how can I say that they are heterosexual? And why do I presume blue equates boy in a gender reveal? And there's no signs that have spelled out the word B-O-Y for boy. And can I use non-gendered language when I read this image? And so here's my non-gendered reading. I see two people. They are exploding blue smoke, and they are celebrating something. It must be the birth of a child. I see a little heart. They use blue because maybe it's their favorite color. Maybe they have a blue-themed party planned. So I have now queered my signified meaning. So this gives you a little quick lesson into semiotics. And if you have questions about it, please reach out to me via Canvas email.